Professor Renuka ji to kindly proceed the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanzila. I'm very grateful to Geshe Dorjila, who invited me to come and chair the session today. And I'm very happy that Dr. Pasricha is delivering the Padmapani Memorial Lecture. I remember when the lecture was started, I was the first one to attend that. And I think it was done delivered by Dr. Dava Norbu from JNU. So I have seen the whole historical development, and I think most of the lectures I've attended. But I feel very honored that I'm presiding. I'm the chairperson of the session today. It has a long history, these series of lectures. Today, Dr. Pasricha is going to be speaking on reincarnation and birthmarks. I don't know how many of you believe in reincarnation or not, but I'm sure after her lecture, we'll have to think about this topic, very deeply. So I'm looking forward to this, even though I don't believe that she's come here to convert us. Dr. Satwant K. Pasricha is a highly experienced professional with over 35 years in clinical psychology. Holding a Ph.D. from NIMHANS, Bangalore, she completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Virginia, U.S.A. Dr. Pasricha joined as a lecturer at NIMHANS, retired as a professor of clinical psychology, and served as a professor at the Himalayan Institute of Medical Science, Dehradun. She is currently working as an Honorary Clinical Psychology Consultant at Serenity Psychological and Counseling Services, Dehradun. With over 40 years of research experience, she is the only scientist in India trained in both clinical psychology and clinical parapsychology. Her collaborative research with the University of Virginia's Department of Psychiatry spans since 1974. Dr. Pasricha has contributed to the national and international publications and authored acclaimed books like Claims of Reincarnation and Can the Mind Survive Beyond Death in 2 volumes. She has received prestigious national and international awards for her research work. Ma'am, we look forward to your lecture today. Thank you.
Okay. This every time. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and ladies and gentlemen. Today I'll be speaking on reincarnation and birthmarks. So what we mean by reincarnation is the working definition is that you can't hear? Okay. At death, the physical body perishes, but a non-physical component survives, which after some time associates with another physical body, and that's reincarnation after a certain period of time. Now, today I'll be speaking mainly on reincarnation or rebirth, but before that, I'd like to acknowledge the funding agencies, that is University of Virginia, NIMHANS Bangalore, ICMR New Delhi, and private donors who also contributed to the research. And my thanks are also due to the subjects and their families for participation. Numerous fieldwork assistants who helped me in collection of data. Now, what I plan to do today is a brief introduction, okay, and features of reincarnation, correlations of birthmarks with previous personalities' mode of death, types of birthmarks, and evidential value of birthmarks, and interpretation, and at the end, I'll sum it up. Now, in introduction, before 1961, there was very little work done. Of course, about 37 cases were done. But after Professor Ian Stevenson of the University of Virginia started working in this area, he went to several countries, and we have now about more than 2,600 cases all over the world. Reported cases, I'd say, because wherever the cases have been reported, we are not sure of the actual incidence of cases. And NIMHANS Bangalore, we have studied almost 500 cases. Now, initially what we did was we authenticated the cases by systematically verifying the claims of the children who remember or who claim to remember that they they remember a previous life. And then we did cross-cultural analysis in which we found some universal features and some culture-specific features. Now, specific type of cases we studied were twins, sex change cases, birthmarks, and birth defects cases. And then subsequently, you will see the I did claims of reincarnation, one book. Then can the minds revive? And the cases that I'll be presenting from all these sources. A typical case starts with a child, when a child is about between 2 and 4 years of age, starts talking about a previous life. He or she gives specific details about a previous life, sometimes in the known circles, sometimes outside the family circles, based on the incidents or based on the statements of the child. Two families concerned meet. Either the child's insistence, the parents of the child take her to the concerned place, try to locate a family, or by when the previous family learns about the child's statements, they come and meet the child. Now, in the next slide, you will see the same child was even met by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And this child was from Kanpur. She remembered the life of a woman who was killed by her husband, and her body was thrown into she was from Kanpur, and her body was thrown into the Ganges. And eventually, since the box was not submerged into the water, it was stuck in the somewhere on the way. So that's how the body was found. I'll not go into the many details. Recurrent features across cultures are age of first speaking of previous life is generally between 2 and 4 years of age. Age of ceasing to speak about previous life is 5 to 8 years. Frequency of mention of mode of death by these children is about in 74%, and higher frequency of violent mode of death in previous life is 49%, which is far greater than in the general population in the respective cultures. Now, children who speak about previous life, they make statements about a previous life. For example, the name of the previous life, mention of mode of death, where they lived, etc., and based on which the previous family is identified. Then they also display unusual behavior in their play activities or mimicry. They have phobias of the mode of death. For example, if a previous person died of drowning, the child will have phobia of water, and if a child was shot dead, the child would have phobia of, let's say, even crackers. Then then in addition, they have facial features, gait or postures identical to previous life. I think this is not very highlighted, this BM and BD, which is birthmarks and birth defects, on which I am going to speak today. Now, sources of verification of birthmarks. We interview informants on both the sides of a case. By both the sides of a case, I mean is the child's case, the child side of the case, and also the previous personalities side of the case, and also we interview neutral informants sometimes if they are first-hand witnesses to the marks or the mode of death of the previous personality. In addition, we check the hospital records such as post-mortem reports and police stations for verifications of the correspondence between the birthmarks and the wounds or injuries on the previous personality's body. Now, the types of birthmarks can be nevi or moles. Then can be experimental birthmarks, and then corresponding to injuries or wounds of the PP or the previous person, corresponding to the surgical marks of the previous personality. Now, moles and may be present in almost every person, have been reported, let's say, on an average 15 moles. But these nevi or moles, they correspond with the moles or wounds of the previous personality, and also they are bigger or larger in size. Now I'll come to the experimental birthmarks. All right. Before I go to the actual cases, I'd like to share with you that His Holiness Dalai Lama has mentioned in one of the books that one of his younger brothers, he died as an infant at the age of 2 years. I think you all know about that. And the family was advised not to bury the child, but to preserve its body, and that the child would come back probably by an oracle, they were advised, or whatever. And then he mentions that as a mark, the body of the deceased child was smeared with butter. And when the last child to the parents were born, he had a yellow mark on his body, which sort of confirmed that it was the same child reborn in the family. Now, this is a child it's a little, why I'd say experimental birthmarks, because in some cultures it's believed that the child will come back, and they mark the child's body, this child's, for some reason, the family had marked it on the sole of the foot, and the next child was born in a different family, extended family, and the birthmark had extended a little bit to the from the sole to the foot. Now this child is from Burma. No, this child was from Thailand. This child was smeared with charcoal, no, grease, and the child, in the same family, this child was born with the birthmarks on the elbow, which is shown here, corresponding to the wounds of previous personality. Now, coming to the case, this was a child. She was run over by, in the previous life, run over by a vehicle, and her both feet were crushed under the tires of the vehicle. And in the next life, she was born with this uh, uh, mark on her left foot and also at the back. We were not able to verify the birthmark on the back, but this was clearly established from the hospital records, and this was from somewhere in Rajasthan. Now, this child remembered the life of another child, another person. In the previous life, he was shot dead by some miscreants, and he had actually 4 birthmarks corresponding to the injuries of that we learned from the post-mortem report, incisions on the body of the, and this was actually, the skull was totally crushed, and this is where the birthmark is shown, and the other two had faded. Eventually these birthmarks fade also. I'll come to that a little later, the character, when I talk about the characteristics of the birthmarks. Now this is a child from I think he was from Thailand, central Thailand, and he was a teacher actually. And part time, I think he was a gangster also. And I think when he was returning back from his school, somehow he also had relationship some with women, and their husbands didn't like it. So probably one of them shot him, and he has the wound of entry and then wound of exit. Now the wound of entry is always smaller than the wound of exit, and this corresponded, which was verified from the post-mortem report. Now this is a case which I studied in Rajasthan again, and this person remembered the life when he was very young. The moment somebody said something to him or rebuked him, he would pick up his clothes and he'll say, I'm going to my village. Then he gave very specific details about that life. And then he said how he was coming back from his tea stall, and some people waylaid him for money, and then struck him with an axe and put his body into the nearby well. And this child has a very prominent birthmark, which was about 7 centimeters by 2 centimeters, if I remember correctly, and 2 puckered birthmarks also, the areas in the same birthmark. And we were able to verify this from the police records, and the persons who had killed him were also caught and tried, but they were let off because of lack of evidence. Now, characteristics of the birthmarks, as you would have seen, they are hairless areas, they are puckered, they are often raised above surrounding tissue, or they are depressed below them, and some are bleeding or oozing at birth. This is a relationship of the previous personality's mode of death and birthmarks, and this has been done in 9 cultures: Clinkets of Alaska and British Columbia, then Burma, India, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Turkey, and Igbos of Nigeria. Now, if you see the number of birthmarks were in 26% in Alaska, 21% in British Columbia, 36% in Burma, 32% in India, 6% in Lebanon, 30% in Sri Lanka, 44% in Thailand, 64% in Turkey, and 65% Igbos. Now, this is an interesting thing about these birthmarks, because in certain cultures, for example, Alaska, and people look for the birthmarks in the newborn children, and sometimes, as I said, they even put different marks, or mark their bodies at the time of death. Now, there was very interesting case. I do not have the slides right now. The woman who remembered the life of her own mother's sister, and when she died, she was generally a sickly person, and she had a congenital heart problem, and she finally agreed to get an operation done. Now, our mother knew nothing about it. The sister knew nothing about it. And those classmates of this girl, they, with lipstick, they marked her body at the back of the head. And this girl, when she was born, the mother knew nothing. And the child had a red mark on the spot where these three girls or three schoolmates had put the lipstick mark, and this was independently verified by Professor Ian Stevenson. And also, this child had a surgical incision mark at the time of birth. I don't have the slides because they were very faint that I had with me. Now, interpretations, it could be a chance, but chance can be attributed to where only one mark is corresponding with one mark. But there are several cases where we have definitely more than one mark, and this makes it more likelihood that chance is very less likely an interpretation. Mental images, if a person has seen the expectant mother has seen the body of the child, or the mental images of the child herself may produce the birthmarks, but they are permanent and they are at birth also, so they are unlike the marks that are produced at the time of hypnosis or otherwise. Now, we have ESP and personation. Now I'm coming to the paranormal explanations. It's possible, it's believed, some people think that the child gathers the information and imposes that personality on herself or himself, or even the parents can get that information through paranormal means and then impose the personality or identity on the child. But this hypothesis still doesn't explain the birthmarks and birth defects that these children have. Now, possession is another possibility, that the possessive personality or discarnate spirit can influence the body of the child and then produce certain marks, but that's very less likely, because unless we know the child is very severely ill and then another party is entering into this. We have a few cases, but we don't have birthmarks in those cases. Now, by process of elimination, we think the reincarnation is the best interpretation for these cases. It's not moving. Okay. Now, thank you. Now, to sum up, considering the contestant interpretations, Reincarnation best explains the occurrence of birthmarks. The birthmarks found in children with memories of a previous life differ from the ordinary birthmarks in several respects, for example, in size, texture, and appearance. The birthmarks in most cases move, fade, or change in color as the subject grows older, corresponding to the change in the size of their body. An interpretation of reincarnation is presented. This is a disclaimer before I end. Interpretation of reincarnation is presented as a strong possible third factor as a cause of birthmarks and birth defects. Why I say this? Because in many cases, genetic factors or environmental factors, in more than 50%, they have unknown causes of birth and birth defect, birthmarks and birth defects. Now, not presented as a challenge or replacement of existing knowledge of genetics or environment factors, but a very strong third factor which can explain these birthmarks and birth defects. No, this is just, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Of course, it is very thought-provoking. There are a few questions which come to my mind. Number one, why is it that when you have accidental deaths, that, remembrance is greater, or in such cases? Does it always have to be a violent death in order to remember your previous life? And secondly, on what basis do you select your subjects? I just had some curiosity about it. And the third question which came to my mind was, is there a direct relationship between the belief system and birthmarks in any given culture? But before ma'am you respond, I'd like to share with you all a little bit about reincarnation and the Buddhist system. And then we'll open the session for the questions. So, what I would like to share with you today is emerging from the question that how is the certainty or the possibility of reincarnation and knowledge about it improve the quality of our life and make us better human beings? So, it is in this context that I would like to say something about samsara. Samsara is the term for the round of births, the cycle of births and death, and more generally, the whole conditioned world or a wandering on. The corona crisis made us all have a close encounter with death and the dying process, and not to forget about the natural losses of our loved ones. Death has emerged as the most important question of our time, as it is a kind of a taboo and we confine it to the embarrassment of private grief. Social inequities have increased as the cost of dying rises, and the issue of death are taken more often than not to the courts. However, death as entertainment is witnessed in practically every movie, and television invariably covers it over 100 times a day. Modern thanatologists like Dr. Kubler-Ross, Dr. Raymond Carey, and Dr. Ernest Becker have given us evidence to support the theory that awareness of death and impermanence helps us to live a healthy, balanced, and a harmonious life. Therefore, it compels us to think of our lives in the following ways. We must reflect on the role of the individual, the nature of mind, the concept of evolution, the actual experience of dying, the relationship between reincarnation and karma, and thus moderation, renunciation, and non attachment. And here I would like to quote His Holiness. There are four types of rebirth. First, the common type, wherein a being is helpless to determine his or her rebirth and depends on the nature of his past actions. Second, the opposite, the birth of an entirely enlightened Buddha who simply manifests a physical form to help others. Third, the birth of one who, due to past spiritual attainments, can choose or at least influence the place and situation of his rebirth. And fourth, known as the blessed manifestation. In this, the person is blessed beyond his normal capacity to perform helpful functions. To attain this last type of birth, the person's desire to help people in his previous lives must have been very strong. Unquote. Fundamental to Buddhist thought is the idea of karma and reincarnation, meaning action or deed. Every action, positive, negative, or neutral, leaves an impression or instinct on the mind that will ripen into a subconscious predisposition. For example, it could be wisdom or cruelty. In the Buddhist view, when the body dies, the mind enters the bardo or state between death and rebirth, taking with it the karmic instincts it has generated during life. Thus, our state of mind at the time of death is what determines our next rebirth. There are 6 realms: the hells, the ghost realms, the animal world, the human plane, and the heavens of the demigods and the gods. And then they talk about the contaminated karma and the non contaminated karma. Contaminated karma belongs to us ordinary beings in terms of the good and the bad we have in our lives. And the non contaminated karma is that of a saint. That means the saint is free of the karmic compulsions that we ordinary beings have. The idea of death, dying, and the in between state and rebirth applies not only to the end of life and what follows. It happens every single moment of our lives and also in every daily cycle. The present mind is a state born from the death of the last moment's mind. Therefore, enlightenment is possible and becomes our responsibility to purify our negative karma in terms of our body, speech, and mind. That is why it is a must for us to have this death awareness and also of impermanence, because according to the Theravada, it helps us to develop a sense of moderation, renunciation, and non attachment. Whereas, according to Mahayana, it helps us to develop great compassion. We feel patience towards the harm caused by others. We tend to develop love, for even our enemy. And impermanence per se helps us to strengthen our resolve to develop compassion. Whereas in Vajrayana, we find that through meditation, the trainee is able to experience the various stages of death and dying. They can actually visualize what exactly happens at the time of dying. So that is all I wanted to share with you. I thought, this will just add to the lecture today. And ma'am, I'd like you to respond to any questions that you have that I had raised, and then we can ask from the audience.
To answer your first question, whether previous life memories are stimulated by the violent mode of death in the previous life, not necessarily. You would have seen the table, and in 49% of the persons had died violently, 51% had died natural death in this. So not all memories are stimulated by the violent death, mode of death. Now your next question is selection of subjects. You would have noticed when I was talking about this, I said it's the reported cases. We do not know what the actual incidence of cases is. Although we did one survey in the North India, but that doesn't represent everything. So we investigate cases which are reported to us by sometimes when we are studying one case in one particular place, which leads to the investigation of identification of another case. Somebody would tell us that we also know of a case, so we make a note of that and study it accordingly. So we are not very selective. As and when we are informed about a case, we study them. So these are the reported cases, as I said. These are not we don't know the actual instance of these cases, because the one we did in Agra district was 1 in 500 per population. But that, as I said, is not a representative of the whole universe. Okay, your next question, I don't remember. What was the third question?
So, is there a direct relationship between the belief system and birthmark?
Yes. Uh, Cases have been reported more from the cultures where there is a belief in reincarnation. But there are also cases from cultures where belief in reincarnation does not exist. Even within India, I have seen Muslim cases who don't believe in reincarnation. They were actually ousted from their community where they remembered the previous life. So I have a few Muslim cases, Muslim to Hindus, Hindus to Muslims, and Muslim to Muslim. Where belief does not exist, cases have been reported from there also, but not as many as from the cultures where the belief in reincarnation exists.
Yeah, it's open for discussion now, and you can raise your question. Yes, please.
Madam, your research seems to be restricted to cases of what I call spontaneous manifestation of reincarnation. But actually, if you look at it, reincarnation, the incidence of reincarnation is much, much more widespread because there's a universal law of karma. And as a consequence of the karma, you incur a karmic debt, what in Vedic philosophy we call rin anubandhana, the debt by which you are bound. And therefore, whether you die a peaceful death or you die a violent death, the universe uh, gives you clues in your next life to actually find out why you died and what was the karma that you created. Because without the challenge, after all, in your life, as you go through life, you have to face challenges on a daily basis, and these challenges are a consequence of the of your actions of your past life. So the manifestation of memories can also largely come through a process of atonement, and spontaneous reincarnation, what you find from and you bring it to birthmarks, is very limited, because the actual stories of reincarnation can be visited through regression, and it could be regression where you are the subject or you're the participant, where you actually travel back into your past life and you participate in the resolution of the karma that you enacted, which resulted in a consequence and then in your death. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I think I attended one in way back in Oslo, one on regression therapies and thing. But I personally don't prescribe to this idea of, because half the time people who are regressed, they are responding to the person who is regressing them, whatever he wants to, and half the time we have no way of verifying them. So our approach has been verification of whatever claims have been made, and it's very difficult to, we were trying to look into the karma and the rebirth, but it's very difficult to establish, because people may have private virtues and public vices and vice versa, like they may have public vices and private virtues, and it's very difficult to establish what exactly had happened to them, because nobody would speak ill of the person after one dies. And even if the person was really a very few cases we have wherein people talk about, and then we have the other evidence from here. The people have been, beaten up, or they have some other, because murderees are not suffering actually, what we have seen. Murderers are suffering, so we do not know what exactly is working the behind the thing. So,
One life's murderer becomes the other life's victim.
correct.
So it's a
We don't
it's a
really
role
know.
reversal. So you
Right.
really can't say that.
That's what I'm saying. It's very difficult to establish, you know. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is that you gave a lot of tables and
It's not working. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You gave a lot of tables and percentages and figures, and I was wondering what it was like. This is question one only. What was it like to actually work with some of these subjects? They were like individual participants in your study. They were the subjects of your study. So, but what was it like? Did you get some feeling that they were unusual children, or they had some special talents, or special kind of brains? And secondly, this should have been question one. How did Dr. Ian Stevenson get involved with these studies? I Googled Amazon for his books, but US academic books are terribly expensive. So there was no question of looking at one even. But I hope there'd be Indian prints of these, perhaps through NIMHANS or your work. So how did he was really singular in doing this kind of thing. I remember a film we saw, I must have been very young. It was called The Reincarnation of Peter Proud.
Yeah.
Remember that film? The guy was killed with a paddle and then he came out and then they reenact that. So that kind of thing must have intrigued the American public too. that was the hippie generation that was looking into Eastern religions. So what was it like? How did he get into this?
Uh, Actually, it's something very private that he shared. But anyway, he got interested in this particular subject because he was not satisfied with. We have actually, he and I have worked in very close association. Every year he used to come to India and we used to go for these cases every year, to different places. Now, during the field trips, he told me that the actual, like as I told in this also, in this lecture, he was not satisfied with the present explanations of a person's behavior, for example. So he thought there was must be something, underneath, which is which explains his unusual behavior in this life or the differences in individual behaviors. And then there were monozygotic twins, for example, twins from the same egg, and they had different behaviors. And then he 1961 he came to India, then he went to Sri Lanka, and first time when he came, he found quite a few cases which encouraged him to study these cases. Then he extended his research into several other cultures. Initially it was 6 or 7, and then eventually 9 when he eventually finished the work. And he's written two monumental books you must have seen. They're very expensive, I agree with you. I have published a couple of books, and these are not very expensive, although I was supposed to buy it from the publisher for 1,200 rupees, 2 volumes, which is being sold now at $79. I don't know why. So, people are actually exploiting the subject. But anyway, he was interested in this because he observed the differences in the behavior of people which could not be explained in the presently available knowledge. So then he started working on this, and then he published, he collected from different sources a small booklet I have. And subsequently, then he started working. Then he first started, wrote 10 cases in India, very detailed work. And then 10 cases in Sri Lanka, and different volumes he has. And even the final one was this where the reincarnation and biology intersect. So that was the classical work, in my opinion. I don't think anybody is going to write before or after, has written or going to write after that. You had another question? Uh, yes, whether I felt these children were very special or these things. See, when I studied these children, some of them are very, at that time, they display emotions. Actually, one of the children converted me into this research. I was working in Chandigarh, resigned, and worked with this child because when she was narrating her previous life, her eyes were very moistened, like she is reliving that experience. She was hardly 3.5. And then when we took her to the previous family, the way she reacted or met her previous life's brother, that was very, very touching and moving. So I think that's when I decided to go into deeper into the thing. And in some cases, children are definitely special, like they have some special characteristics. But by and large, they are normal children. And after the age of 5 and 8, they stop speaking, whether they go underground or because sometimes the parents take measure to suppress their memories because there are certain beliefs that the child would die young or something will happen to the child. So they put him on the potter's wheel counterclockwise, after which the child stops speaking. So many, from ordinary ignoring the child's memories to very severe methods they take to suppress the memories. So that's why I think they stop.
Yeah.
I just had three quick questions, and
they are related. The first one, to what Professor Renuka said, and also the gentleman then. So in the Buddhist belief, the reincarnation would imply a special being where they have some control over their rebirth, but rebirth would apply to everybody. So my question there was that did you make any sort of distinction in this way in your study?
Did I make what?
Distinction.
Distinction.
Like reincarnation would apply to special beings and rebirth for all of us. Like we all have been reborn.
Yes.
So was there any of this kind of distinction made?
I think we have very few cases. We can't make generalizations, but at the same time, people who do not remember previous lives, they can also show this in their behaviors. As I was telling, the same family, let's say siblings, it's one thing that they are very different because they've had different lives in the previous life. So we can deduct that from their behavior.
Then my second question, G, that even if children stop speaking from the age of 5 to 8, did you come across that in their later lives they may show affinity for their previous births? Like, it doesn't stop at age 8, even if they stop articulating it.
Yes.
And the third related question was that your study, maybe I got the wrong impression, but it would imply that people took rebirth in the quite close to where they took a previous rebirth.
Yes.
But did you come across situations where people remember lives in another country or situation?
Yes. Now, most of the cases, you have rightly said that they were within a few kilometers, but they say there's a psychic glue that brings them back to the same families. And also, the second question that you raised was international cases. We have very few, and only from the behavior we could infer that these children were from. Because, for example, a child born in a very ordinary family and would ask for, knife and fork and ask for bread or those kind of things. So we have a couple of cases even in Delhi of that sort. Now your third question was whether they have affinity with the previous family. Now in some cases I think it's a reinforcement. I know a few cases wherein even the famous case, I didn't bring it today because it's a umpteen number of cases that I had. So in the limited period, I had to show certain specific types of cases. There, the child in Kota, for example, the two families concerned kept meeting, and the previous family even contributed to the marriage of this child. So much, and there was another family. There was this. At least they were equal in, I think, social or socioeconomic status. There was another family in Mathura, wherein the present child was born in a Brahmin family. Previous family was a different this thing, but she kept visiting the family, and both the families sort of kept exchanging visits, irrespective of their socioeconomic status. So in certain cases, depending on the two families concerned, how they accept the child, and the child's family allows the child, because sometimes they are very afraid the child will go from them forever, So they don't let the child go there.
Yeah, there's the heat wave.
Dr. Pasricha, my question, before I ask my question, I would say it's more of being inquisitive than challenging. When we were talking about regression therapy, and what I understood was that most of the regression therapy is actually orchestrated by the therapist, is what a statement that you made. And therefore, had the statement not come from you, I would have just, let it go. But from a chair that's holding such a lot of weight, all the books and all the things that we read about Dr. VC or brain VC or the others. Are you saying that they are all orchestrated?
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm please understand that I come from a very intrigued situation. I'm not challenging.
No, I'm not saying that. But see, we have no way of verifying the things. Some of the cases that Brian Weiss has mentioned, I think they pointing towards little stronger basis, but we still don't know, because in many cases what had happened was the origin of the belief or the origin of that particular life was later found in a historical book. And many a times, I think there was a very good article. If you wish, I can probably give you a reference later, wherein it's a fallacies of hypnotic regression. And I attended one myself I was invited there in Oslo. And they said, I said, no, I don't subscribe to this. And they said, no, but we would like to, verify our whatever claims that we have or whatever our findings are. So we went into, they gave us a demonstration of a person, and the person said that, he gave us something about a previous life of under hypnosis, that how he had developed this backache. And I think this hypnotic regression has a therapeutic value. I definitely agree. It has a therapeutic value, but as far as verification part of this is, I'm not very sure.
Thank you.
And then I'll come to you.
There are two things which I've always not found an answer. One is a person may die in Delhi. It's not necessary that the soul may be reborn in Delhi only. It could be reborn in Chennai or in another country. How does the soul travel so far? What is the basis? Now that's one thing. The other thing is you mentioned children between 2 to 5 narrating about experience of the previous birth. Do they see their previous birth people? Do they see them in their dreams also? Has any study been made as to what kind of dreams they see? Dreams. Do they see the acquaintances and people who came into their life in the previous birth?
Yes.
Because even as adults, I see a lot of places and people in my dreams which I've never visited. So I'm wondering what it could be.
People from one place to another place, they have been born, definitely. But usually my studies have shown that they are within the same areas. Let's say I had some cases from South, Madras to Madras only, and then some in Mysore and other places. But how does this soul travel from one place? Now, in some cases, they have said when the person concerned or the mother or somebody is passing through that area, the soul, wherever it is, would go with that person and then go to that place. That's how, but it's a very, very premature statement that these children make, that I came to this place, my father was passing on a bicycle and I came with him. That those kind of claims they make or the statements they make. Now about, I did not go into the days. We have seen children who are making as many statements as very few, let's say about 6 to 7 to several statements. In one case, 67 statements were made, and which included the recognition of the previous personalities, relatives. Even in one case, he was able to recognize the murderer when he was selling vegetable in that village. So, but in the normal cases, these children are able to recognize the persons concerned or related to the previous family, even friends, not necessarily immediate family members, but also friends or sometimes even distant relatives. So they are able to recognize.
Excuse me, madam, I'd just like to add here that the soul is not tangible matter. Soul is consciousness, and consciousness travels at the speed of light. It is light. So you, within the blink of an eyelid, your soul, if you die in Delhi, your soul could manifest itself in South America, depending upon the karma that you have created and where you are going to redeem your karmic debt on that new journey of yours.
Yes, over here.
Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am. I would like to know what happens after death and between the rebirth. What is the phase involved?
You asking? She is actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The intermediate, the intermission between the life and death,
Yes.
rebirth. So we do not know much about this. What happens? Some people have given this information that they went to the other realm and they were decided there. But we do not know how to verify that. Now, to counter that, now we are working on near-death experiences because there's a life between these. I mean, there's a big intermission between for these cases. Whereas for near-death experiences, people are returning immediately or within a few hours, So that is still under study. I am still working on this, on the book, but a lot of work has gone in from the University of Virginia again. Dr. Bruce Grayson has done a lot of work on this. And they all to speak about the other realms where they go there for different reasons. They are sent back. That is a different topic itself that we need to talk about, near-death experiences. It's a vast subject. But they are returning back after some time. So they give a description of the other realms.
I can just add to this. Yeah. According to, the Buddhist tradition, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, you are in a state of bardo. That's an in-between state. So that usually lasts for 49 days. So every 7 days, if you haven't gone into another body within 7 days, you die another death. So maximum you can have or 7 deaths. So during that period, you will, according to your karma or your state of development, evolution, you will enter some body in those 6 realms that they talk about.
I was curious to know about the interspecies reincarnation. Is there any proof about that?
Yes.
Interspecies.
Yes. You can go, you can become an animal, you can.
In the
Okay.
research data.
See, some children have actually mentioned where there was, intermission was very long and people asked them, where were you and all that. But it's very difficult to verify that intermediate life, very difficult. So either we have to take the child's word or
Interspecies, he's saying.
interspecies, is it?
Somebody has memory of being other being.
Well, actually,
That's what I said.
interspecies, there are 8.3 billion people in the world. So obviously there's interspecies rebirth happening because they're also
evolution
reaching a
also.
point of evolution. Okay.
But as he has asked question about what happens between death and rebirth. So it also in Garuda Puran, in like in Hindu mythology, that book is Garuda Puran. Also there is written what happened when that.
No evidence. And as the ma'am said in the beginning, that I'm not
madam.
here to convert anyone. I've just presented my data that we
नहीं
have
मैं
found.
मतलब बोल रहा हूँ कि ये तो पहले भी मैथोलॉजी जो बुक है जो मरने के बाद गरुड़ पुराण वगैरह पढ़ा जाता है
हाँ।
उसमें भी तो लिखा हुआ है ना मरने के बाद वो निकलेगा तो वहीं पर कुछ दिन रहेगा फिर ऊपर जाएगा ऐसे वो तो जैसे ये भी तो बहुत अच्छी चीज तो पहले भी जो लिखा हुआ है वो भी इसी तरह का है
Ma'am, just a small question, from the studies or examples which you have quoted, what is the average or the minimum or maximum period from the time of death and from to the rebirth or reincarnation.
Yes.
From the discussion, I gather that it is small. I mean, she said 49 days as per Buddhist Tibetan philosophy. So, is there any minimum or maximum or average time
We
period?
have, yes.
Thank you.
1 month to 14 years. And in one case, it was much more than that, but we had all verified. Now, on average, it's between 3 and 5 years. There's a range from 1 month to several years, but average is between 3 and 5 years.
So, it cannot be more than 5 years. I mean,
No, it can be 5 years. That's why I'm saying there's a range from 1 month to several years.
okay.
But average, I was telling you, is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, he just wants to add.
Ma'am, one small query once again. If one person dies, it is said that it is like hitting 100 scorpions have hit you. So, how could you elaborate, or have you experienced how painful is the death for a person?
No, I don't have any information on that. Sorry.
Oh, good evening, ma'am. So recently, I think in Times of India, so there is a case given. I think it's in Madison, Wisconsin. So one child basically accused someone as his murderer, right? So nobody believed him. So at the end, they just the child gave a clue that I was killed with an axe, so which has been buried in a garden. So they just went to the place and they just unearthed that. So they found the axe. So it's the newspaper. I think you may have heard that.
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay.
But similar cases have been reported on the basis of child's, when they dug over the, let's say sometimes children say that they buried some money or something and they dug over there and then they found, but I'm not sure of this. But in another case, as I said, a child was able to recognize the person who had killed him. So that I think I met the lawyer there, and he said he'll rake up the case, but I don't think that was really taken in the law of court.
Okay, so my another question
I
is
don't
regarding to the word, the reincarnation, right? So I think in the Judeo-Christian, or you can say Abrahamic religion, so they doesn't have the concept of reincarnation or rebirth. Rather, they will talk about resurrection, right? So I want to know in which belief or in what's the origin of that concept, reincarnation or rebirth. So do you have?
Cases amongst Christians also have been reported and studied. Cases amongst Muslims also who do not believe, they believe in the final judgment or, but cases have been reported from them, whether they believe it or not. So that's about all. I don't know what more than that.
So one more question to the gentleman here. So I was very curious that when the gentleman is giving the comment, he says, when with death, the speed of the consciousness is in the speed of light. So can you give more about that? How can you just give that speed of light, the consciousness goes?
That's what I mean. There's no clinical study of being able to measure the velocity of consciousness, but the general belief among metaphysical experts is that consciousness travels at the speed of light because it's all pervasive in the universe. The universe, I mean, if you go into the philosophy of it, the universe started with singularity, which was the point of dense matter. Now, according to Hinduism, singularity is represented by Shiva. And that dense matter then broke into two parts because you can't, singularity couldn't exist by itself. So it created duality. And from that, then the universe was created. So, I mean, those are very metaphysical questions, and I don't think you can actually answer it in a, like a question-answer quiz, because you have to go into a deeper study and understanding of it.
My question is that in religious perspective, of course, we have different concept, but light, speed of light. So we are, I think, taking the concept Physics.
Yes, well, that's what is the. I mean, I cannot give you an example because I studied as an interest, as a hobby. Not my area of study, so I can't tell you where it was measured. But that's what the general belief is.
Any other question? Yes, please.
Now you have moved yes or no, your email, is it which at gmail.com? Your email.
Oh, Mike.
When you were playing the presentation, you moved from the first slide too quickly. I wanted to note down your email ID. Is it drpasricha@gmail.com?
At gmail.com, yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other question?
One question, ma'am.
Yeah.
I have a question which has come on from online YouTube live streaming. So because we have participants who are watching from YouTube as well. So Ms. Shanti Yajnik, she asked you, she asked you if there is any known cases of false claims, for the reincarnation and the birthmarks, and what is the time gap between the death and the reincarnation? I think you have already mentioned that there's a time gap of probably 1 month something, right? So I think I request you to answer the first question, which says if there is any known cases of false claims for the birthmarks and reincarnation as we see today. Thank you.
False cases meaning what? We have cases wherein children had birthmarks but no image memories. We have, but we can't call them false cases. We can't call them because just because we don't have or they don't remember the previous lives. These are false cases. They have birthmarks. Many children have, wherein they don't have any imaged memories of that life.
Right, ma'am. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your thought-provoking presentation. I think maybe I can end by sharing one of my experiences with you on reincarnation. All I can say is that I was born in a very progressive family, and we were not religious, and I didn't believe in reincarnation at all. Till I had certain experiences in my life. And since I was an open-minded person and had a very scientific, cast of mind, so I was willing to look into this phenomenon. Once, one of my professors at JNU, which was a very radical university, told me about my previous life, and I still dismissed it because, I didn't believe in it. Till I started studying, Tibetan Buddhism. And when I encountered Lama Yeshe, I met him once in my life. And after that, I had a dream in which I saw that he passed away. And actually, within 6 months of my meeting with him, he passed away. It came out in the papers. A year after that, I again had a dream in which I was holding a child and Lama Yeshe was there, and he said, "That's him." A year after that, in the newspapers, they announced that Lama Yeshe's reincarnation was found in Spain. Lama Osel was reborn. And you wouldn't believe, I used to jot down my dreams those days, and I showed my dreams to my family, my parents and my younger sister. They said, "Are you crazy?" I had already dreamt about all those things, and it was coming out in the papers. And then when I met this little child who was 2.5 years old when he was brought to Delhi, because His Holiness, I think, was going to do some pujas and confirm that, that was Lama Osel. There was a lot of press around him, this little child. He didn't speak at that age. And I also waited for over 40 minutes And I said, come on now, he's very sleepy and he doesn't like all these lights, so let's just all go. Just as I was going to leave, this little child called me in exactly the same manner as Lama Yeshi had called me when I met him only once in my life. You cannot imagine what I went through at that time. And then for half an hour, this little boy, Lama Oseli, played with me like mad. Until today, I have such a special bonding with him and a relationship with him. So what I'm trying to say is, no amount of reading, no amount of debate will convince you of reincarnation unless you experience it yourself. It is only this dimension that changes, your whole attitude towards such experiences. So I wish you all the luck. I hope all of you, sooner or later, will experience reincarnation in some form. Thank you.
Maybe you have to take a bit of things. Some people have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to our chairperson, Professor Renuka ji, and the speaker, Professor Satwant Pasricha ji, for your thought-provoking lecture. And now I would like to request Venerable Professor Kabir Gilji to kindly do the honor of offering the souvenir and the kata to our chairperson and the speaker. The speaker, Professor Satwant Pasricha ji. Professor Renuka Singh ji.
Thank you. Wonderful sharing, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Professor Kavila. And once again, I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation to the speaker and the chairperson and to all the audience who have gathered here and who joined from Tibet House YouTube live stream. And if all of you are interested in Tibet House program, please do visit our Tibet House website and also kindly email us at programs@tibethouse.in. And thank you and happy Holi. Yeah.